Hello, welcome back to my channel, and I'm going to talk about 7 practices that are not our Igbo traditional practices. Now, these practices, we somehow, it is now being camouflaged as our culture, but it is not really our culture. It is something we borrowed, it is something that we learned, it is something that, for some reason, we presume that these things are our culture, but in reality, it is not part of our Igbo cosmological traditions and cultural practices. Now, the first one is marriage to Ndi Igbo is not till death do us part. Now, this part is what we got from religion or from Christianity. Now, marriage is within the Igbo cultural context. It is done on the premises that it is the joining of two families and not the joining of two individuals that are separate from the family. No, this is why marriage, before marriage happens, you see the process of ekwaka, the process of introduction, the process of imeko, the process of emalom, bogo. So by uniting and we're getting to know more of the families, and this is where Ijuese also comes in, to know the kind of family that your daughter or your son is about to get married from. And what do they know these people as? Are they good people? Do they have history of any transferable or genetic diseases? Are they of good moral standing? Do they have good public image and all those things? So Ijoese and other aspects of the Igbo traditional marriage system revolves around trying to say that marriage exists between the families and not really the individuals. So even marriage does not separate or destroy the union of the marriage that exists between families. So even after marriage, after death, the marriage continues. Now, if there is going to be a dissolution, it is going to be a system whereby the families come together and they return the bride price and they bring the palm wine that they would close with the pear leaf, akwukwo ube. That the indicator that says that we are already done with this marriage. Now, the second one is adoption. Ndị Igbo, we do not believe in the buying and the selling of children. Ndị Igbo adịghị ego nwa. Alasị gị na Igbo adịghị ere nwa and Igbo adịghị ego nwa. Now, adoption is a tricky conversation because my personal opinion, I believe that every child deserves and needs a home. So, for whatever circumstances a child becomes an orphan or a child that is abandoned, I believe that adoption helps. But within the Igbo system, Igbo culture and traditional system, adoption is not part of our culture. Every child had a home. You don't see people throwing away their children back in the day because of the how close knit our society was. So adoption is not our practice, but I think because of our reality, because of the things that we are seeing today, we are experiencing, adoption has become a necessity for our society because it now aids in giving a home to children who are victims of circumstances. Now, Iriji celebration is not done by women. Now, in Igbo cultural society, G is synonymous with masculinity and Ede is synonymous with femininity. So what this means is that while Igbo men celebrate the yam, Igbo women celebrate their femininity, which is being represented by the, the cocoyam, the Ede. Now, domestic violence. Now, people live within the assumption that bride price somehow refers to the selling of a married woman. It means that you have bought a woman because you paid for her bride price. And this is why I'm of the notion that we should change this bride price to bride wealth. Because what it means here, our ancestors believe that marriage, that women bring in wealth into the families through marriage. Now, when they are giving you the bridal list, the marriage list, and all the other things that entails. They're trying to gauge if you're going to be able to take care of their daughter. And the bride wealth or the bride price is also seen as a token that you give to the people that raised your wife, which is her parents and her kinsmen and her relatives. It's a token that you give to them as a sign of appreciation. So the idea that bride price or bride wealth means that you have gotten a property, and for that reason you can mutilate her, you turn her to be a victim of domestic violence. It is not part of our traditional Igbo society. And this is why back in the day in some communities we have this custom of ime go tale. Now, what that culture entails is that if for any reasons you subject their daughter to domestic violence, then the young men of that community, of that umuna, that lineage, would use that same money that you made for Imego Tale, and they would use it to punish you. So that culture creates a system that deters men from perpetuating domestic violence on their spouse. Now, because of how close knit our society was, when women become victims of domestic violence, they will just go back to their father's house, and it becomes a thing of disgrace that your wife went back to her father's house because you beat her up and you mess her up. So men in those days were cautious of their reputation of and their image because of the so much disdain our society created against domestic violence. It is not something that we handled lightly, or something that it is a grievous offense. And in situations where a woman who is a victim of domestic violence and her people do not come to her rescue, it is also a thing of shame to their own family that your daughter is being mutilated, your daughter is being beaten by her husband, and no man is stepping up against, trying to come to her aid and to her defense. So our society back in the day abhorred and disgraced men who were violent to their wives, and this in return protected Igbo women against domestic violence. Now, today, domestic violence is just treated as if it is just a walk in the park. The level of disdain our ancestors had for it is not being appreciated or elevated in this current day and time. They begin the question of what did she do and all those things. They're trying to negate and to downstream the grievous offense or the grievous nature of domestic violence. So it has now led to the perception that probably because of bride price, our ancestors accepted Devi, but it is not part of our culture. Now, the fifth one here is divorce is a sin, and it is not really our culture. Divorce being perceived as a sin was a European perception or European interjection of our culture. Our ancestors back in the day, we had this custom of anokwayim. Now, like I said earlier, when a woman does not want to marry a man again, she's for any reason she does not want to be in that family. Now, there is a system that ancestors created, and what happens here is that not just would mm, her husband's people come to collect her bride price, or her family returns her bride price. Now, the husband's people are going to come back to her father's house with a keg of palm wine that they closed off with apple bay, the pear leaf. The essence of doing that is to show that this marriage is now sour and they are no longer doing, we call it anokwayem. So our ancestors were okay with divorce, and to them, when you're divorced, you can still remarry. The disdain or the backlash on single women was not something our culture tolerated. Single women or divorced women were not shamed for any reason. If you go back to your father's house because of any reason, if it is because of an attitude or a behavioral issues, they will try to curb it, they will try to fix it, they will try to do all other things, but they do not see a divorced woman with some sort of disdain. Now, it was through European interjection that the perception of divorce became related to it being a sin, or saying that God does not like divorce, and they now attached it with some level of shame. Divorce was never attached with some level of shame because our ancestors believed that It is better that my daughter is alive than something bad happening to her. Now, the female inheritance system, which becomes the sixth thing that people believe that we women do not inherit. Now, inheritance rather is tricky. The first one here is that our ancestors do not bequeath ancestral lands to their female daughters, and this is because their daughters are going to get married, and if you get married, it means that you're going to move into your husband's house, which becomes it now becomes improper for you to move into your husband's house and now also move in with your with your father's obi, with your father's ancestral land. Your ancestral land should always remain with your immediate biological family. Rather, inheritance, we have this system of idonono, whereby the father, the mother, all of them provide a foundation that the woman is going to use in her husband's house. This is where the whole idea of bridal wealth or bride wealth comes in. Because what happens here is that your family are going to give you, back in the day, they give you jigida, the waist bead, they will give you loads of wrapper, they will give you cookwares. Now, if your family were, buoyant enough, they can even bequeath a land to you, or they would give you goats and they would give you chicken to rear in your husband's house. So this is what our ancestors were doing, because that was the system of resources they had in their own time. Now, currently, we could say families gifting a house or a car or something to their children. But what they did not know is that thing that are giving to their female children when they are getting married, it's also a system of female inheritance. Now, what we're only looking at as inheritance is that we are looking at the idea of being bequeathed with ancestral lands as a system of inheritance. But lands are not just the only thing that that we record as something that we gift as a foundation for the establishment of a person's life. So female inheritance, we had a system of inheritance for women. So we cannot rule out that female inheritance was abhorred or seen as a taboo within our Igbo ancestral system. Now the last one here, and the most essential, is depositing of a corpse in the mortuary. Our ancestors did not keep corpse in the mortuary. They did not deposit corpse in the mortuary. Once you die, within 24, they will perform some certain rituals depending on your status in the society. If you're a person of, like, you have title of Nze or Ozo, or you're a dibia, or you're a chief, depending on your status and who you are in the society, it will depend on how, the burial rituals that are going to perform for you, how the women are going to prepare your body, but you're going to be laid to rest within 24 to 48 hours of your death. We do not keep bodies in the mortuary because there is this culture that morticians have, which is the removal of some of the intestinal organs, and they will embalm the body. Now our ancestors saw it as that when you're removing some of those things from a person's body, you are kind of delaying their reincarnation process. So our ancestors they want to, they die, you bury them immediately so that they can hasten their own reincarnation process. Now I know of Chief Ike Dife from my hometown, who immediately he died, he was laid to rest. Now 1 month after, a few months after, they now did the formal burial, which is what most traditional men are doing. Some of them would tell their children not to send up to the mortuary, but to rather bury them immediately after they are dead. So this is how our ancestors handled corpse. We did not go to the mortuary. They bury you immediately. The dead don't live with us for like a month. They bury you almost immediately. You're gone, and we believe that it helps to hasten the reincarnation process. So these are 7 Igbo practices that are not our traditional practices but are seen as our traditional practices. So I don't know if you have any question, or if you want to continue this conversation, you can leave some of the practices that or you're worried or you're confused if you're trying to, this is this an Igbo culture or is it an Igbo culture. So you can leave them in the comment section, and I would answer if it is an authentic Igbo culture or is something that's how it is being perceived, has it shifted, and all those questions. So don't forget to comment, don't forget to share. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. We discuss Igbo culture, customs, and spirituality. And until next time. ya gasịa.